Welcome to the Darkstream. Voxday. Voxday.blogspot.com. And, of course, JORDANETICS, a journey into the mind of humanity's greatest thinker. So, first of all, I want to mention something to some of the commenters, especially people who are attempting to express their differences of opinion with me. Now, first of all, I want to make it clear that I have absolutely no problem with anybody disagreeing with me. No problem at all. I don't expect everyone to agree with me. And so, my lack of interest in engaging in debate in the YouTube comments is not indicative of my disrespect for your right to your opinion. It is not indicative of a belief that you must be wrong. It is not a belief in the idea that I must absolutely be right. Okay? But the YouTube comments are not designed for debate or discussion. Okay? The only place that I engage in any sort of debate or discussion is on my blog, and then it is only on the subject of the posts. So, if you want to ask me a question, I'm more than happy to answer the question. I mean, I answer a lot of questions here. We don't have super chat. I do read through some of the comments. I try to read through all the comments. I don't pretend to get all of them, especially, on the older videos. But I'm going to answer probably one question. All right? We're not going to have a debate in the YouTube comments. So just don't even try it. If you have a question, fine. If you want a clarification, fine. But we're not going to have a debate there. If you think I'm wrong, that's fine. But you're not going to convince me in the YouTube comments. And I'm not going to have a discussion or a debate with you in the YouTube comments. So I just want to make that clear. Now, the MirrorCon. The MirrorCon is something to which I make reference in JORDANETICS, the new book that's out. The reviews have been great. Those of you who have picked it up, I appreciate it. Look forward to hearing what you think about it. Be sure to review it on Amazon. If you want to make sure that people see what you think about the book, that's the place to do it. But if you have the book, what I'd like you to do is go to chapter 13, and I want you to go to the dialogue from Peterson's appearance on the Joe Rogan Experience number 1139, which was on July 18th, 2018. And it's helpful if you actually have the text in front of you, because it really helps you see what Peterson was doing. And so there's a couple different types of mirroring. What mirroring refers to is it's a term that's sometimes used in psychology and behavioral analysis. And it's a way of attempting to manipulate your relationship with the other person by imitating what they're doing. So, for example, if you're talking to someone and they cross their arms, you sit back and you cross your arms. If they start stroking their chin, you start stroking your chin. You're mirroring, literally imitating what the other person is doing. And this is something that you are, that is supposed to help you get in sync with them and make them like you better, make them more amenable to what you want them to do or what you want them to think. Mirroring can be unconscious. It's something that people tend to do. You'll notice that if a guy likes a girl and he reaches out and touches her, she will often respond by doing the same thing, by reaching out and touching them. So there is a natural human behavior that can be utilized for manipulative purposes. And one of the things that I talk about in the book is Jordan Peterson's lecturing process is something that I call preemptive mirroring, which is not anything it's something that I made up. It's, for lack of a better term, I don't know what would be the right way to describe what Peterson is doing when he's talking, but he is clearly attempting to say things that mean essentially nothing, so that the listener can hear what he wants to hear in Peterson's message. And that's why it's so common when you hear someone trying to summarize what Peterson says, or more importantly, when they're trying to summarize one of Peterson's positions, what they will very often do is tell you their own position. And they will very, very seriously believe that Peterson just happens to be mimicking or echoing their own position, or that he happens to share a position with them. But you soon realize this is not possible when you talk to 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different Peterson fans, and you ask about his opinion on something. And so that's why if you talk to a Christian, he will very often tell you that Jordan Peterson is a Christian, even though he very clearly is not. If you talk to a conservative, they will very often tell you that Peterson is a man of the right, even though he is not. They'll tell you, oh, well, he's a classical liberal. And of course, these are always people who consider themselves to be classical liberals. And so, I find it very amusing when I'm talking to someone, and you're asking them what they think about something, or why they believe this, or they're asking me why I'm criticizing Peterson, and they say, well, you shouldn't be attacking people on our side. You shouldn't be punching right. Peterson himself specifically says he's not on the right. He says that is the most common misapprehension about him. Well, why does that misapprehension exist? Because of his technique of preemptive mirroring and allowing people on the right to see what they want to see in him. So, Ralph has a good point. You see it in his Twitter defenders. They claim multiple positions for Jordan B. Peterson on the same subject. That's exactly correct. Charlemagne says, literally yesterday on the Peterson Discord, we argued over what his position on nationalism was, and we longtime followers of him could not agree. Of course you can't. He doesn't want you to be able to agree. He never wants to be nailed down to an actual position. And that's part of his 12-rule path. So, anyhow, let's talk about what I'm talking about, the mirror con now. The mirror con is when someone is attempting to mislead someone by mirroring what they're saying. Somebody said that, what was the term they use? This is a better term for it. It's not transference, not pacing. What is this? I'm trying to find exactly what that. Damn it! I should have commented on it when I was looking at that. Anyhow, what happened to Peterson? This is just a suspicion. Okay, I am not saying that this is absolutely, definitely what happened, but even though Jordan Peterson, cold reading, that's it. What Peterson is doing when he's talking to Rogan, and I suspect that what he does on a regular basis is he does what a lot of fake psychics do. He's doing a cold reading. He is utilizing the clues that he's picking up in order to make you think that he knows more than he does. I'll give you an example of this. And this is something that all highly intelligent people are tempted to do. Okay? I get tempted to do this all the time because I can often successfully anticipate where somebody is going, what somebody's going to say. I can tell from various clues that they're giving me, what they're thinking. And this can sound really impressive. I remember in college, a woman once asked me, she was one of those, I think I'm a witch sort of girls. And I laughed and I told her that was nonsense. And she said, no, but I can sense these things. And I said, look, I'll demonstrate how ridiculous it is. And I said, just, tell me something. I'll tell you something about yourself that you don't think I can know. I said, ask me a question. And so she said, tell me what my nickname for myself was, my secret name for myself. And I said, Galadriel. And she was all astonished, like, you can read minds, that sort of thing. But the thing is, she didn't have very many books in her room. She had The Lord of the Rings, a really nice set of The Lord of the Rings, and a used set of Lord of the Rings. Well, there's barely any, she's a huge Lord of the Rings fan, and there's barely any women. I basically had a 50%. It was either Arwen Evenstar or Galadriel. And, she was blonde. Not rocket science. It's easy to do. It's just, this sort of cold reading thing is very easy to do. But it's more than just the cold reading. What I mean by the mirror con is that the cold reading is related to it, but when you're engaged in a conversational mirroring, what you're doing is you are attempting to key off of what the other person is saying. And so, bye, Gamma. So anyhow, let's look at let me give you one more example. This is why you should never do it, no matter how smart you are. And this is why I try very hard to avoid giving into the temptation of letting people believe that I know more than I do. A very good friend of mine is a really good musician. Good singer, plays the piano. And so he knows a lot about music. Jazz, classical, you name it. So we were watching A Room with a View together. There were a number of couples, and we get to the scene towards the middle end of the movie when Helena Bonham Carter's character is playing the piano. And my friend says, I can't believe they chose that particular Beethoven piece. It's such an easy one. I can't believe that they chose that. And so we were all impressed. Like, this guy, knows music so well that he was able to correctly identify a Beethoven piece that none of us recognize. It was not it was not the fifth symphony or anything like that. And so we're all impressed. But, about 10 seconds later, Daniel Day-Lewis comes in and says, "Do you know, Mother, it turns out that Lucy was correct. I had thought that she should play Beethoven tonight, but she insisted on playing the Mendelssohn. And do you know, I think she was correct." So everyone just went silent. And then we all started laughing. Because, this friend of mine, he's a good guy. He doesn't take himself too seriously. And so he knew he had gotten absolutely called out and busted by the movie. Now, why did he do that? He had no idea who had written that particular musical piece. But earlier in the movie, 2 or 3 times earlier in the movie, they referred to how Lucy plays Beethoven when she's peevish. And then there's another time where they specifically talk about her playing a Beethoven piece. So it was a good guess. But that's all it was. It was a guess that was posing as knowledge. And you can get away with it. If you're someone like Jordan Peterson, you can get away with it a lot. And one of the ways that you can tell that someone is doing this is that they're very intent. They're very intent on the other person. They're listening very hard to the other person, but they're not actually listening in order to understand what the person is saying. They're listening for keywords that they can target off of and use. Okay, so they're looking for anchor points that they can take from the other person and use to launch their own statement, and use it in order to convince the other person of whatever it is they want to convince them. So now listen to this, and keep in mind, Jordan Peterson has a reason for this whole cockamamie story. People got carried away. They got focused on the whole Cider of Doom thing, right? Because this was such an epic disaster that it actually did kind of manage to, at least as far as people paying attention to this particular episode goes, it did manage to kind of conceal what Peterson was hoping to achieve. See, what he was hoping to achieve when he went on and talked to Joe Rogan about his terrible experience with cider is he was trying to produce an excuse to cover up his disastrous performance with Sam Harris that was one of the first times that he was unmasked. Okay, you need to understand, Jordan Peterson is exceptionally dishonest. Jordan Peterson is one of the most dishonest people in the public eye, other than Hillary Clinton. His level of dishonesty can only be described as Clintonian. And so here we go. Peterson says, the worst response, I think we're allergic to, or allergic, whatever the hell this is, having an inflammatory response to something called sulfites. And we had some apple cider that had sulfites in them, and that was really not good. Like, I was done for a month. That was the first time I talked to Sam Harris. Okay, so what's the whole goal here? The whole goal here is to cover up the fact that Peterson has a horrific and deceitful definition of truth that he was totally unable to convincingly make the case for. As somebody just said, he lies about his lies. I mean, here, he's already lying about his lying about his lying. And so Rogan says, You were done for a month? Oh, yeah. It took me out for a month. It was awful. Yeah. Now, Rogan, and this is why I don't think much of Joe Rogan. I think Joe Rogan is trying to help Peterson restore his reputation. I think Peterson is trying to help cover up for the fact that Jordan Peterson was exposed. So he says, so this is right before this whole truth conversation with Sam Harris that got stuck in the mud. Okay, stuck in the mud? The conversation did not get stuck in the mud. The conversation was a complete non-starter because even as slippery a character as Sam Harris, Sam Harris is no paragon of truth or virtue, but even Sam Harris, who is very prone to coming up with his own slippery definitions himself, he could not believe how completely out there Peterson was. He could not believe how shamelessly deceitful Peterson was. And he kept calling him on it. So Peterson says, during. It's not, see, this is very important. Rogan says, so this is before this whole truth. No. It wasn't before, it was during. So Peterson, it's not even enough for Peterson that this happened before it. It's during it. It's the cause, you see. The cause of his horrific performance against Sam Harris. During it was, I think the day I talked to Sam was like the worst day of my life. Not because of talking to Sam. Oh, so now this is the worst day of his life. Not the day that his daughter had to have surgery. Not the day that he had to get medicated for depression. Not the day that his best friend committed suicide. The worst day of his life was because of this apple cider. The day he talked to Sam. I mean, he is desperate. This is where you know that, like all con men, Jordan Peterson is terrified of being exposed. I mean, I can tell you right now, he is probably having a near breakdown right now just because of Milo writing the foreword to JORDANETICS and JORDANETICS becoming a category bestseller. So he says, not because of talking to Sam. Rogan says, just physical. Peterson, Jesus, I was so dead, but I didn't want to not do it. Oh, what a saint. I mean, he knew he was in terrible shape. It was the worst day of his life, but he had to do it. There's no way I could have lived like that if it would have lasted for. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Okay. There's no way I could have lived like that if it would have lasted for. See, Michaela knew by that point that it would probably only last a month, and I was like, okay. Now here's where this gets interesting. See, he gets interrupted by Rogan. The month he's just said the effects of the cider, the negative effects of the cider, were expected to last for a month. And that's, probably an exaggeration, but it's not completely incredible. If you do eat something and you have a bad reaction to it, it can take a while to recover from it. I mean, more likely it was probably around a week or so, but it's Peterson. He exaggerates. So he's talking about how the effects of these sulfites could affect him for up to a month. He knew this, etc., etc. But like anything, he's expecting that the effects are going to tail off, right? But he gets interrupted by Rogan. Rogan says, a month from fucking cider. And that interruption screws up Peterson, Because Peterson is cold reading. Peterson is mirroring Rogan. And so, no, Peterson's cue it's not Rogan's cue. What happened is Rogan interrupts Peterson. Peterson said a month. And I was like, so he's already going on to the next part of his lie. And he says, well, I didn't sleep that month. Okay, we've got a lying tell there, because when Peterson lies, he reliably repeats himself. He repeats himself right when he lies. I noticed this when during the Faith Goldie, or the interview about Faith Goldie. The only time he repeats himself is when he is saying something that he knows is not true. But what happens is he was going to say, Michaela knew by that point that it would only last for a month. And I was like, he was going to say something like not sleeping well. He was already in his mind moving on from how long the negative effects could persist to the fact that he was not sleeping well. But Rogan interrupts him. Rogan interrupts him and says, a month from fucking cider. Because Peterson's a con man, because he's cold reading all the time, because he's doing this mirror con thing, he says, well, I didn't sleep that month. I didn't sleep for 25 days. I didn't sleep at all. I didn't sleep for 25 days. Now, he realizes he has lied because he is doing his repetition. I didn't sleep that month. Okay, he was cold reading, and when Rogan burst in with that a month, he hooked on the word month. And so it just came out of his mouth. So suddenly he's trying to explain it away, because this is what liars do. Liars do not admit that they lied. They don't even like to admit that they're wrong. I mean, this whole thing, the whole reason he is there, the whole reason he's talking to Rogan about the first place is because he can't admit that he got his ass handed to him badly by Sam Harris and his absolutely inept attempt to redefine truth. And so then Rogan says, so he doesn't just repeat, I didn't sleep that month. I didn't sleep for 25 days. I didn't sleep at all. I didn't sleep for 25 days. What he's doing there is he is trying to bring it back. He's repeating the lie to himself and to the person he's talking to, because he is trying to figure out how he can spin that lie into something that is more credible. And so Rogan doesn't help him here, though. How is that possible? So what does Peterson do? I could have told you what the first thing Peterson is going to do when Rogan asks that question. How is that possible? Peterson is desperately trying to figure out how he can explain away this absolutely idiotic lie that he just told. And he's already repeated it out loud because he realizes how ridiculous it sounds. So what he does is he mirrors what Rogan said because he's trying to buy time. This is what liars do. They always try to repeat what you said. There are times when people are looking for clarification. There are times when people actually need to be careful and precise in their speech. there are reasons to buy time, but we're dealing here with a confirmed liar. We're dealing here with a confirmed fraud. We're dealing here with somebody who himself admits that he has a serious problem telling the truth. And so Rogan says, how is that possible? Peterson immediately responds with, I'll tell you how it's possible. Now he doesn't know how to explain it. So he says, you lay in bed, frozen in something approximating terror for 8 hours, and then you get up. That's the best he could do. Remember, this is also somebody who tells you that he chooses his words very, very carefully. What he doesn't tell you is that he chooses his words very, very carefully while he is cold reading the person to whom he is talking. And that's why he is so much better on video, and he's so much better doing interviews, because what he is doing is essentially manipulating the audience, manipulating the other person. And so that's also why you are probably never, ever going to see Jordan Peterson debate someone like Milo or someone like me. Because he knows that someone who is as verbally quick as Milo, and Milo is verbally faster and thinks faster in verbal terms than anyone I've ever met, Peterson knows that he cannot possibly keep up with Milo. He would not be able to bullshit him. You can see the speed with which he operates when he's talking to Rogan. I mean, the speed with which Peterson is operating in his we'll call it his verbal processing cycle is about, I would estimate, 1/5 to 1/10 the speed that Milo operates. So to put it in military theory terms, Milo would be so far inside Peterson's OODA loop that he wouldn't have a chance. He also wouldn't have a chance against me because I know what he's doing. I can see through his tricks, and also, he can't snow me. I'm, at a similar level of intelligence. I probably have a broader, better education. Obviously he knows a lot more than I do about psychiatry and psychology and so forth, but, he's not going to be able to BS me on theology, history, biology, economics, whatever. And so, Peterson always wants to debate people who are going to essentially, he always wants to debate people that he can use in order to elevate himself. So that's why it's very silly that they're even being portrayed as debates, because what they really are is, it's akin to, what do they call them in boxers? The palookas. They're just feeding him. It's like a boxer that they're trying to build up for the chance to fight a big money fight. They throw palooka after palooka at him so he can knock them out and build up a big record and look really impressive. But, it's not going to do any good when you get put up against a real fighter. And so, anyhow, I got a lot of questions about what I meant by the Miracon and what Peterson was doing. I hope this makes sense to you. I hope that you have a better understanding, not only of what I'm talking about, but I would encourage, I don't pay a lot of, this may sound a little strange considering I just, published an entire book about him, But I really don't pay any attention whatsoever to Jordan Peterson other than to write the book. I don't watch his videos. I don't follow him on Twitter. I have no idea what he's up to. You know, I was kind of surprised when somebody said he's in Slovenia. I was like, what? You know, what on earth is he doing in Slovenia? Oh, okay. You know, leveling up with the globalists. Got it. So, Bolt says he won't debate someone less famous than them. He's got nothing to gain. Yeah, except for the fact that Milo is more famous than literally everybody that he's debated. You know, you could maybe say Sam Harris is more famous, but look how the Sam Harris debate went. The whole reason he was on the Joe Rogan show is to try to explain away his ass kicking in talking to Sam Harris. So somebody says JBP released an apology letter for Democrats today, which he read on video. You know. So anyhow, well, that's all I've got. Not exactly a major, broad-ranging topic of global import, but I mean, these are things that I think are sometimes interesting to go into, and I find these things interesting to try to understand how people are doing these things and see why they're doing them. Cheesy Puff says Jordan Peterson is still haunted by the Sam Harris debacle. Of course he is. He's a gamma. He will be haunted by that until he dies. I can tell you right now that cover alone is haunting Peterson's thoughts. He is probably tremendously upset internally, and desperately trying to figure out what he can do about it. And the thing is, with gammas, you just keep the pressure on. I mean, the guy is already he's already a broken man. That's why he has the issues that he does. And the thing is, on the one hand, you have to have some sense of pity for the guy. It can't be easy living life like that. But he has actively devoted himself to furthering the cause of global evil. And so we can't show him any mercy. When people say, what does he need to do? What does he need to do? He needs to repent, both publicly and privately. He needs to disavow the deceitful 12 rule path that he is trying to with which he is trying to lead people to destruction. I mean, no man is beyond redemption. No man is beyond salvation, but you have to humble yourself and be willing to do it. And, the path that Peterson is offering through JORDANETICS, as I said in the book, he's offering salvation without repentance, and he's offering redemption without remorse. And these are more lies. A couple questions. When's the Owen Benjamin chat happening? I have no idea. When it suits Owen. I think he's still out doing things in California. Let's see. Cerno and Stefan valled him out on Twitter for signing with CAA. I don't know what that means. I'm assuming that was negative. Let's see. What's your take on QAnon? Same as it's always been. It's a useful morale booster. What are your thoughts on hypnosis and neurolinguistics? I don't believe that it is right to attempt to deceitfully manipulate the minds of others. I've been awake for 27 days now. Yeah, that apple cider, it's a bitch. I know you don't care about them, but would you ever be interested in doing a critique of one of Peterson's biblical lectures? I think I'd rather leave that to people who are better biblically versed than I am. When are you going back on the Alex Jones show? Probably when the paperback comes out, would be my guess. What are your thoughts on the likelihood of a military dictatorship in the U.S.? We should be so lucky as long as it's the God Emperor imposing it. A Sea of Skulls extended edition. I am working on it. I think I finally figured out what I want to do with the Fiotra storyline. All we need is 12. Amen. What befalls a man when he runs from repenting his sins? He runs into the embrace of evil and he makes it worse. Thoughts on Michael Malice? I have none. I have no idea who Michael Malice is, nor do I care. The Sam Harris JBP debate was the one on stage. I have no idea. I never saw it. I just read the transcript. Vox, have you always believed in God? No. I don't like to talk about myself or my personal experiences. Peterson uses Christian imagery to lure unsuspecting Christians and at the same time is secular enough to bring in the atheists. Syncretic mess. Yes, that is true. In Italy, is the advertising majority non-white or black males and white women? No, but it's really bad in the UK. If you ask me about Michael Malice one more time, you're going to be deleted from the channel. Do not repeat questions. If I haven't answered it, then I haven't answered it. What's the Swan Knight saga going to be about? The Swan Knight saga is actually the graphic novelization of the Moth and Cobweb books by John Wright. Excellent fantasy. Excellent young adult fantasy. I highly recommend the books, and the comics are going to be awesome. Vox, could you do another talk about economics? I'm sure we will. Are you optimistic about the future of Christianity and the survival of Western civilization? I'm not just optimistic about the future of Christianity. I am certain about the future of Christianity. I'm considerably less certain or optimistic about the survival of Western civilization, but I think it is way too soon to count it out. What do you think about the EU Army of Love and Tolerance coming soon to an EU near you? I think the EU will break up before anything like that happens. A YouTuber named David Stewart made a good point about Comicsgate branding themselves as something they're not until they have to say what they represent. Well, yeah, that was part of what got me in conflict with Comicsgate. I was told that they stood for one thing, and then I was informed that they stood for something else. Plans to do more Darkstream on interest usury? Not until I do considerably more reading on this topic. I don't know the writer and author Jim Goad. My preferred wine at the moment is a wine called Celeste from Torres. Thoughts on C.S. Lewis? Love Narnia. Love Mere Christianity. If you haven't read both, do. Are there any plans for Flying Sparks to become a series? Not at this point. Alt Hero Q 2.1, bring it on. It's coming it's coming very soon. We're doing tests tonight. What is the best computer strategy game? I couldn't possibly say what is the best, but I can say that my favorite is Fantasy General. When will your trilogy be finished? Who knows, but it's actually going to be 5 books, not 3. It's always been 5. Voxiversity on Rhetoric versus Dialect, already filmed. We're just waiting for the producer to finish it. Will there be a Jordanetics Volume 2? Probably not. How do you think EVS is reacting to Jordanetics? Probably dishonestly, because that's how he reacts to all things. Are you still looking for cosplayers for the Alt Hero comic characters? Yes, we will. Do you consider anarchists helpful allies? No. Do you think Jordan Peterson will read Jordanetics? He will almost certainly skim it. Does that cover give you or anyone else the chills? No, not in the slightest. I tend to think it's really funny. What are your thoughts on Lovecraft? Probably the greatest horror writer. Can a author contact you about getting his books published and distributed through Castalia House? We're not taking any submissions right now, so your best bet is to self-publish on Amazon. Let's see. When will there be another global financial crisis? Sooner rather than later. Is a pacifist Christian a coward, maybe even a traitor, or following truth? It depends on whether his pacifism is legitimately based on his understanding of Scripture or whether he's using it as an excuse. We can't necessarily tell the difference from the outside. William Lynn's 4GW handbook, did he publish it first with you? Yes. He and Gregory Thiel wrote it right before we published it. Part of it was written years before, but they, we helped put it together. Looks like McGinnis just quit Proud Boys. Gee, I'm shocked. I've never paid any attention to either McGinnis or Proud Boys, so I'm not concerned. What's the best economics book that explains against comparative advantage? Why Free Trade Doesn't Work by Ian Fletcher. Did you watch JF's review of your book? No. I'll probably scan the transcript at some point. But I understand that he was generally favorable, other than obviously thinking that the religious and spiritual stuff is all BS because he doesn't believe in it. So I think that's a fair response. Let's see. Why do you, Jack Vance? Jack Vance is a great writer. Great writer, more influential than people realize, less interesting to read than you would like. Let's see. I don't know. I don't know who the greatest evil visited on Western civilization was. I don't have an opinion on that. Should we use the word imperialism instead of globalist? No. What do you think about Identity Europa? I think that it is a precursor of many nationalist parties to come. JF was very positive about the book overall. Well, that's great. I like JF. I respect JF. I had a good time talking to him. And so, obviously we don't agree on everything, given that he's an atheist and I'm a Christian, but that's fine. Where can I get all of There Will Be War? Well, it's all available on Amazon, and it'll be, at the moment, we don't have it all in print yet. We're working on that. Do you believe Atlantis existed? Probably in some form. Do you think Stefan Molyneux will ever be a Christian? I think that it's a reasonable possibility. All right. Well, that's all I have for tonight. Thanks for tuning in. Remember, Jordanetics is out and available. If you haven't picked it up yet, I'd encourage you to pick it up. If you have read it, I'd encourage you to make sure you post a review. And thanks very much for tuning in. This is the Darkstream. I'm Vox Day. See you next time.